Hello and welcome to the Growing Healthy Families podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Scott Haggerty. On this show, I interview the world's top health experts so that you can know with certainty what it takes to give your family a life of epic health and wellness.
As parents, we don't want to see our kids struggle. I knew that he had the potential. I knew that something needed to be done.
It was hard. We would get frustrated. We didn't know how to deal with it. I was more emotional about it.
Sure that, we're here. Amen to that, brother. Amen to that. Hello, moms and dads, and welcome to the Growing Healthy Families podcast. Now, moms and dads, I got to tell you, the total science geek in me is really excited today because this young lady that you see is coming to us all the way from New Zealand. So this young lady is Dr. Heidi Haavik. Looks like Haavik, and we've all mispronounced it, right? But it's pronounced Haavik because you're Norwegian, right? And
yes.
And so we are extremely excited for Dr. Heidi to be with us here today because I have a personal vested interest in having Dr. Heidi on here. Number one, I support her research because it is such a cornerstone for what I do clinically in my practice. So thank you so much for the amazing work that you're doing at your clinic. So secondly, there's an organization called Epic Pediatrics that I am a proud member of. And the National Wellness Foundation, which is our nonprofit arm, is actually currently in the process of raising money to fund some of Dr. Haavik's research that is specific to pediatric brain changes as it relates to adjusting. Because clinically, we see it all the time, right? Amazing changes, but obviously it matters most if we can then reproduce it in a clinical setting through research. And third is that Dr. Heidi has done something very, very unique. Clinically, right? Clinical evidence is important, right? And what we see here in a day-to-day situation is very important. But Dr. Heidi has done something unique to our profession. She has taken the extra step of taking her work and having it vetted by non-chiropractic scientists and published in the most highly respected neuroscience journals. So Dr. Heidi, welcome. Thank you for being a part of our podcast today.
Thank you. Thanks, Scott. Pleasure to be here.
So, we're very excited to have you on and discuss some really cool things. And so what I want to do is I want to give our viewers here a little bit of a taste of just some of the cool things you've accomplished here. Because when I read your bio, it's like the who's who in research, right? It says, Dr. Heidi Haavik is a chiropractor who also gained a PhD in human neurophysiology. Dr. Haavik graduated from New Zealand College of Chiropractic in 1999 and has practiced for over 17 years. She was awarded her PhD degree by the University of Auckland in 2008. She is currently the Director of Research at the New Zealand College of Chiropractic, where she established the Center for Chiropractic Research. She is also the author of the book, The Reality Check. My autographed copy right there. Fantastic read, moms and dads. The Reality Check, a quest to understand the chiropractic from the inside out, and which you can find at www.HeidiHaavik, spelled HAAVIK.com, and we'll have that also in the notes afterwards. This book describes in easy to understand language what happens in the brain when a chiropractor adjusts dysfunctional spinal segments in the spine. Dr. Haavik has used her neurophysiology expertise to study the effects of adjusting subluxations on the function of the central nervous system. Dr. Haavik is the director of Haavik Research Ltd., a company that enlightens the world about the science of chiropractic through www.therealitycheck.com. Dr. Haavik is also an adjunct professor at the University of Ontario Institute of Technology in Oshawa, Canada, and was a member of the World Federation of Chiropractic's Research Council for 10 years. Dr. Haavik has received numerous research awards and has published a number of papers in chiropractic and neurophysiology journals. She has presented her work to both chiropractic and neuroscience communities around Australasia, Africa, North America, and Europe. She is on the editorial board of the Journal of Manipulative and Physiological Therapeutics and Journal of Chiropractic Education, and is a review editor in movement science and sports psychology for Frontiers in Psychology and Sports Science. She was named Chiropractor of the Year in 2007 by both the New Zealand Chiropractic Association and the New Zealand College of Chiropractic Alumni Association. Very impressive.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It seems like it just went by like that.
I bet. I bet. Well, it's because you never stop moving.
No, and it's bit of a problem, that one, really.
I'm sure, right? But I think anybody who knows you knows that you're on a mission. Isn't that correct?
Well, I'm on a mission. I'm on a mission. Yeah. My current mission, and it's been going for quite some time, is that I have this need to enlighten the world about the science of chiropractic. There's so many misunderstandings out there, and it just drives me mad. Mainly because there's so many public members out there that don't get access to chiropractic care because they don't realize what it is that it actually offers them. So,
yeah, and it's so true, and it's that type of a mission that really can change not just public perception, right, but really raise awareness about the true health benefits that chiropractic has for children and adults of all ages, right? So thank you so much for taking that mantle, because we really needed somebody like you to step up and do this.
Thank you, Scott.
You're welcome. So I'm going to dive right in here, because I have a lot of cool things that I want to talk about with you today. And so, moms and dads, the great thing about bringing on somebody like Dr. Heidi is, right, really smart people have a really good way of making super complex things way more understandable for us. And so, Dr. Heidi, through her website, has created a lot of animations that, if you've been to our Facebook page or anything like that, you see a lot of those on there, because she can take that complex stuff and make it very understandable for those of you who are not neuroscientists or doctors. So I want to start digging into some of these pieces of research, because obviously evidence is a very powerful driver of understanding. So, obviously you're one of the world's top researchers in spinal function and its effects on the brain. Can you tell our listeners how the spine influences the way the brain interprets input from the world around us?
Sure. I mean, to answer that question, we kind of almost need to take a step back first. And how does the brain interpret sensory information, and how does it function? There's a couple of key things that you need to know. One is that the brain will take all the sensory information that comes in from the body and as well as the world around you, and then it sort of mushes it all together and creates a virtual reality. And the key there is that it's a virtual reality. It's a bit like if you saw the movie The Matrix, when that guy was, plugged into those supercomputers, because the brain doesn't just see what the eyes tell it and hear what the ears tell it. It actually interprets that together with its knowledge of its own history from the past, what it's experienced, and its expectations for the future. And this is where it gets a bit funky, and it sort of mushes it all together into a virtual reality. And so when we started out on our journey 20 years ago, trying to understand what the spine did do to the central nervous system, we had no idea that it was so influential. But over this 20-year period, we've done multiple studies, and we've shown that spinal function is far more important for how that brain puts together that inner map of what's going on in the body and the world around you. So, for example, we did studies where we showed that spinal function influenced how you hear and see things, and how you interpret sight, visual information and auditory information at the same time. It changed the way, spinal function changed the way you mentally rotate objects in space. I mean, this is how you look at the world and identify things around you, and the way your spine moves is influencing how your brain does that. I mean, it was quite mind-boggling when we started to find these things out. We've also shown that spinal function influences how your brain is aware of where your body is. Obviously, you wouldn't walk around going, oh, my elbow joint position sense is out by 5 degrees. But what you would might maybe notice is that you knock your elbow in door frames, or you knock your head getting into a car, or you put a coffee cup down and you think you're putting it on the table, but it actually misses the table and falls on the floor. That kind of thing. Or you're misinterpreting what you're seeing and hearing, or you can't cope in loud, noisy, bright environments and stuff like that. That would be the kind of symptoms that you might notice. So it's still we've only just started on this journey, and we have a really long way to go. But what's really interesting is that this spinal function seems to influence how our brains interpret what's going on in your body and the world around you. Does that kind of explain it?
Yeah, that's great, because honestly, one of the things that within my practice, right, we have a lot of kids, right, and what the feedback we'll oftentimes get from parents of young athletes, is they'll see this very tangible effect on, so they're making shots they wouldn't have made. They are making blocks they wouldn't have made before. They're showing better coordination and very tangible, very real things, right? When the kids are coming in and they're super excited because, wow, I got adjusted and it was like a superpower, right? Well, this explains in very specific mechanisms why this type of thing would happen if a child's brain map is not working the way that it should, if their virtual reality is distorted, right?
Yeah, and it's so cool to hear that it's happening in children. You know, Scott, I've been researching now full time for about 10, 15 years. So I loved practice, and we had a big family practice, loads of children and babies, and so I'm a bit out of it now. So it's just so wonderful to hear again these things that are actually happening in daily practice. And it's so true, because a lot of the research that we're doing, it's so relevant for sports performers. It's not even fun. And we've even done studies in sports populations, like elite taekwondo athletes, and shown that we make their brains more efficiently able to produce force. So it's like you make the brain more effective at doing what you want to achieve, which means you would be more body aware, which means that you could then do your, eye-hand, eye-foot coordination should be better, or could be better. You would be able to kick easier, catch better. I want to run a study in children now, you see, literally just looking at all of these things, not only sports performance though, but even like motor learning. We've done some studies, where we've shown that, you can even retain a movement. We do these motor learning tasks. So like a movement or a tracing task. So it could be anything. It could be even like writing skills, right? That's a motor learning task.
Yeah.
And then we've seen people with dysfunctional spines, they don't retain the motor learning as well, and they have these changes that we're recording in their brain at the same time. When we adjust them, they do retain that motor learning and then have different changes in the brain. So it almost looks like you could learn movements better or more efficiently and remember them for longer. Yeah. But again, it's very new research, and I can't, overclaim these things. I get very excited, as you know, and so, and again, a lot of this research that I'm talking about is mainly done in adults, as you know, and we can't, automatically extrapolate that to meaning that it's also happening in children. I'm assuming that their nervous systems is, kind of similar to ours, because it kind of is. Again, to me, because kids are in that learning developing stage, it would have even more profound effects long term, if you're changing their brains. So that's why I think it's so important we start looking at these kids populations, because I think you'd have such a profound effect on them, research-wise. Yeah.
Well, I completely agree. I mean, because obviously, given the fact that my practice is primarily kids, right? And, we've been seeing these for a number of years now, really profound changes in everything from autonomic function to, abilities to focus and pay attention in school, sensory processing issues dramatically improving, emotional dysregulation issues dramatically improving, right? And so what you're talking about is that, there's a possibility of an influence that can help to improve brain function by these mechanisms. Is that correct?
That's exactly what we're finding out. And I hear you on that, because, for so many years, 120 odd years, we've not been able to explain these things that we have seen in practice. But this new research that's coming out can explain it. That's what's so exciting, because we've shown, again, in adults, that we change at least two particular parts of the brain. And please note I said at least, because there might be more, but we know definitely we're affecting two parts of the brain. And those two parts of the brain are the cerebellum and the prefrontal cortex, not the big words, who cares, but those two particular parts of the brain are very, very influential and directly connect with our autonomic nervous system, with our immune system, with our hormonal system, with our emotional regulation, and with inflammation. So it's, if you do see changes in autonomic regulation, if you see changes in emotional regulation, if you see changes in hormonal stuff, all these, bigger issues that we know are involved with inflammatory processes, then it would make sense that the reason that that's happening in your offices is because we, as chiropractors, know when we adjust the spine, we're changing those two particular parts of the brain. It doesn't mean we can cure everything to do with those things, but it means if you are seeing those things in practice, most likely that's because we're affecting those two parts of the brain. And we've never had an explanation before, right? That's what's so exciting. We now actually can explain it with basic neuroscience.
Yeah.
These are most likely the pathways that this is being influenced.
Which is tremendous, because obviously, being able to understand what's happening when an adjustment occurs, right, and seeing the areas lit up, it really gives us then the ability to start driving forward with understanding, but also places to move next with research, correct?
Yeah, and hopefully in the future we'll be able to identify, those people that we definitely will be able to help versus those that, there might be other reasons that they have their symptoms and conditions. And that's what, I find really exciting. And I think that there's many of these conditions that we actually can influence.
Mm-hmm.
Most people wouldn't even be aware that we can influence.
Yeah.
And again, it doesn't mean that we can fix and cure them all, but we can influence, for some of them, their quality of life, their function and their health. And I would just like people to have the option of trying something that's so, safe and cost effective and patients love it, and just to be allowed to give that a go for them and their children and their families, and if it doesn't work, that's cool. You haven't, lost a hell of a lot. And if it does have a profound impact that we know it does on some people, it would just be so wonderful that more people got to experience that.
Oh, I completely agree. And, and honestly, some of the things you've talked about really are some of the trigger things that a lot of the kids that we care for, that they're really struggling with, right? Because autonomic regulation is a huge issue, especially in the world of neurodevelopmental disorders. And, one of the things I reference a lot is there's a research study that you did that talked about the role of the prefrontal cortex. And I know, obviously, just from neuroscience, that the cerebellum is a direct connector into the prefrontal cortex. So I would love if you could spend some time talking about specifically the role of the prefrontal cortex and its connection into neurodevelopment as it relates to especially a pediatric population.
So we know that the prefrontal cortex, it's basically just behind your forehead. So it's this frontal part of our brains. It's known as our executive function. So it's a bit like our intelligence as well. And it's that part of the brain that uses all the sensory information that comes in and then decides how to best do what it needs to do so that you can achieve what you want to achieve. That's the executive functions part. It's our reasoning, it's our thinking ability. So being able to focus, to switch attention, to ignore the distractors out there. So you think of kids at school, right? I mean, to me, that is the friggin' prefrontal cortex. Being able to function and perform in school, you kind of need that functional prefrontal cortex. What we know, which is really, really interesting, is that stress of any major kind, and that could be physical stress, emotional stress, chemical stress. So even think birth defects, could be a huge stress, or even just birth trauma could be a huge stress, or if the kid's been in any accidents, or if they've experienced any traumatic events in their lives. These things we know affect the prefrontal cortex more than any other part of the brain. And what happens is when you do get that stress on the system, the prefrontal cortex gets switched off. So there's your rational thinking, cognitive, efficient, intelligent brain is literally turned off. What happens then is I normally do it with a hand, because you think your forehead is the fingers. Underneath the forehead, when these fingers, the prefrontal cortex gets flipped off, you go into what's known as the emotional limbic brain. So that emotional limbic brain, and then you've got your brain stem down in the wrist here. That emotional limbic brain is then the kid that is throwing a tantrum beyond 2 years old. So if you've got, or freezing. So the kid could be either, angry or crying or just literally losing the plot, or withdrawing into themselves, shutting off, freezing down, not being able to communicate at all. Often when they're in that limbic brain as well, they can't communicate, they can't reason, they can't verbalize what's going on, because that needs the prefrontal cortex. Mm-hmm. So and what's also interesting is that prefrontal cortex is directly linked to our vagal autonomic nervous system. So being able to heal and calm, and so if that's flipped, they can't heal and calm. They're in almost in this fight and flight response. Mm-hmm. And this is where the prefrontal cortex is so intimately linked to our endocrine regulation as well, because it's that hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal hyperdrive. It's that stressed system. And it's not good for the body to be under constant stress like that. And so you get this flooding of and adrenaline through the body, which makes them jittery, jumpy. They have higher heart rates. They have higher breathing rates. And then you add that emotional dysregulation on top of it. So you've got like literally a hyperactive, quantum throwing child of some kind.
Yeah.
And so this whole system needs to calm. And it's very easy then to think, hey, let's just drug the hell out of them, which, in some cases, you probably do need a medication, but there are other things that can be done. And that's where I think chiropractic can come into it and make such a profound impact. We also know that direct links with that prefrontal cortex and the inflammatory system, or the anti-inflammatory system, which is needed again to calm the system down. But if you again have flipped the prefrontal cortex, it can't do its job. And so it's to me, when we then discovered that the effects of the adjustments were directly impacting that particular part of the brain, that prefrontal cortex, I was just blown away. Because it's just, it has such profound implications for health, for function, for immune system, for autonomic regulation, emotional regulation, mental health disorders. And you think of the development of these children then, and knowing that part of the brain is, so sensitive to any stressful inputs. It's quite a big deal. Again, of course, as a scientist, I've got to say, we haven't yet done these studies in children. We don't know exactly which parts of the prefrontal cortex we affect. We don't know for a fact that those changes in the prefrontal cortex are related to beneficial effects. But, when you've got 120 years of chiropractic clinical experience as a professional body, and we see it has a benefit, I'm assuming that effect is a beneficial effect. We've also shown, for example, with heart rate variability, I don't know if you use that in your practice, but heart rate variability is actually directly linked with prefrontal cortex function.
Yep. So
if you're showing in your practice that people are improving in their heart rate variability, it literally equals that they have better prefrontal cortex function as well. So I think there'll be more and more of that in the profession moving forward.
It's interesting that you brought that up about the heart rate variability, because we use that on every single patient that comes in as a direct measure of change, right? And so I'm really glad that you brought that up, because the role of the vagus in calming and organizing the brain is a huge thing, because when you have that increase in sympathetic tone, and we know that you can't be in growth and protection at the same time, one of the things that we use all the time as a checkpoint is to see, are we getting changes to autonomic balance using heart rate variability? And one of the really cool things is when we talk about a lot of the kids when they come in, right? We know there's a smaller range of variability for kids than there is for adults. And we see a lot of these kids will have really significant sympathetic dominances on the adult plots. And so one of the things, like when I talk with the mom and dad, right, and we go through and we discuss what the HRV actually means, we talk about how this is really a long-term measure. This is a measure of where they are at, how driven their nervous system is by neuroplastic change down this road is sympathetic dominance. And then how we can watch it as a checkpoint. So as we go through phases of care, we can watch the child's brain begin to balance in a number of different ways. Number one, obviously on the graph, but two, we can watch things like heart rate begin to normalize, because oftentimes we'll get kids who are, 10, 11, 12 years old, who their heart rate should be, down in the 80s, who are still pushing off 110, 115, 120 on a beats per minute, which is really extremely high for kids of that age. And so it's attractive.
Heart alone.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. It's crazy, right? But obviously, we see then the correlates with, outputs with anxiety and behavioral challenges that, and when they come in with their baseline and they're, at maximum threshold on the sympathetics, as we watch things calm down and we watch the HRVs begin to normalize, mom and dad come in reporting, so he's been sleeping, he's calmer, his temperament's improved, he's doing better in school, right? And these are clinical things that we see that also match neurologically an expectation of when the prefrontal cortex starts to re-engage.
Yeah, it's so wonderful to do those objective measures, Scott, and I'm so I'm proud of you for doing that, because I know it takes extra time to do those kinds of things, but it's such an amazing objective measure. And for parents out there, you can get these devices for next to nothing, and you don't need to understand more than the fact that high heart rate variability is good. So the high heart rate variability is good, low heart variability is bad, which is opposite the heart rate. So the rate you want lower. So you want a lower rate and a higher heart rate variability. Think of it, and if all you're doing is just measuring in your kids, even what you're doing yourselves at home as parents, is if you're changing their diets or if you're working on any other behavioral programs, you will know if it's working for your children if their heart rate's coming down and their heart rate variability is going up. And it's that simple. You don't have to understand it more than that, eh, Scott? I mean, it's such a cool objective measure.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. And it's, it's really cool because you can see so many tangible changes just through that one, right? And I know I interviewed Dr. David Fletcher from Chiropractic Leadership Alliance not that long ago. We had a conversation about really being able to go and use this as a great window, right? Because it's such a great tool for us as a kind of a suite of ways to go look at it with a combination of thermal scanning, SEMGs, to be able to watch not just the nervous system changing for the short term, but watching it start to change and rewire for the longer term as the brain starts to calm, right? Because that's, honestly, right, the ultimate goal is to calm the brain down so that it can start doing the
prefrontal cortex. Be able to heal, to have that anti-inflammatory effect. The cascade is kind of endless,
Yeah, it really is. It really is. And I think it's really cool when you start looking at the prefrontal cortex and its role in so many different factors in children's,
Yeah. I mean, you think of a little kid at school, because some people said, oh, well, Heidi, your changes in the brain, well, who cares? And I'm like, well, actually, I think quite a lot. You think of a child at school. Does it not matter to that kid at school that their brain knows where their arms and legs are accurately? I used to watch children, in my own practice, and they'd walk 5 meters and fall over their own feet. And I think, they shouldn't do that. You look at chiropractic kids or kids of chiropractors that have gotten adjusted all their life. They don't trip and fall. They don't knock their heads. They climb in all these, kids activity, climbing frames at school and, hang off their feet. And it's just like, oh my God. But they don't fall. They don't knock themselves. They don't injure themselves the same way. I know that that's anecdotal and that's not science, but this is why, to me, I want to do that study just in general children, because I'm so convinced from my own observations, I have eyes and I'm not a silly person, that this would show dramatic differences in children's ability just to function at school, let alone the prefrontal cortex's ability to then, be able to think clearly, focus properly, ignore distractors, decide what little subtasks needs to be done to achieve the task you're trying to do the most efficiently, being able to most efficiently activate your muscles, being able to identify objects, being able to accurately see and hear properly. And it's not that you can't see and hear properly, but it's interpreting what you're seeing and hearing. And all that is done by the brain. So it drives me mad. I mean, that's, I suppose, why I'm on such a mission, like you said. I think they deserve access to this, even if it's just a 3-month trial for every child on the planet to see how it might affect them in a positive way. Yeah.
And it's really true. I mean, I just did a webinar actually earlier today that was all about immune function. And you just the critical role of the sympathetic shift between the Th1 and the Th2 immune system and the cascade of events that it has.
Research on that, Scott.
What's that?
We need to do research on that.
I agree. I am totally down.
Yeah, with chiropractic, right? T helper 1, T helper 2 balance. I mean, that would be so exciting.
It really would. It really would. Because, I mean, as you know, like you mentioned with Chiro Kids, right? It was spurred by a conversation that occurred here. One of my kids' teachers has observed, right, in watching my kids for 4 years go through school, my daughter for 4 years, my son now for 3, and talking to another mom whose child also goes to the school and saying, so I've watched watched Dr. Haggerty's kids over the course of the last, several years. His daughter has missed 1 day of school in 4 years, right? She's never sick, right? She's the kid who, if she comes up with a sniffle, she rebounds quicker than a hiccup. My son has never missed a day in 3 years of school, right? They also do amazing in school, do amazing in sports. And there's a difference that she noticed. Right now, she came in because she had a child who had some neurodevelopmental struggles that they had tried a million different things with. And so when her daughter came in, one of the challenges was she had some significant immune issues as well. And so in the conversation, she was talking about how over time she has watched her daughter's immune function dramatically improve. And so, that conversation was her telling another mom about all these changes she's seen because the mom is starting to see some of these things in her own child.
Yeah.
And so it kind of spurred, there's a need for more awareness about immune function changes and the role of sympathetic tone and parasympathetic tone as it relates to that.
I think there's also, one of the things that we've got to be aware of is that, chiropractic care is probably one part of multiple things that make up health and wellness.
Yeah.
And I think when we start doing these clinical trials, looking at these different functions, we're going to probably show that there are responders and non-responders. Mm-hmm. If we're just looking at chiropractic care, you know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
I think one of the most profound things will be the effect of chiropractic care. But I think one of the reasons that in our clinical trials it doesn't always show up as a positive change is that there's some of the kids respond really, really well, but a lot of them don't necessarily respond really well for many reasons. Could be that there's other causes, could be that it wasn't done long enough, who knows? But just to say an example of that from a research perspective, just so that, because we're so far away from understanding this fully, but when you say, for example, there was a study done with kids on bedwetting, and they did this study, they looked at all these kids, and overall the effect of chiropractic was a tiny, significant effect, and you think, oh, well, what do you do? Tiny effect. But then some other researchers looked back at the data, and what they showed was that it was actually only 25% of the children that responded to the chiropractic care, but those 25% got over 50% better. And that was like a short period of time too. So some kids will respond really, really fast and really, really well. Mm-hmm. But, here you have, 75% of them didn't really make any changes at all. So it's like, how do you identify those kids that are going to respond really, really well to chiropractic care versus those that probably need a combination of many different things? Does that make sense?
Totally.
And that's tricky in the research world, because until we can actually identify them, it gets very difficult to then, to design our studies properly, to be able to say that, for these particular, kids or adults or whatever, chiropractic care has this tremendous effect. But anyway, that's part of my job, my challenge, right?
But, it's important to identify things like that because, obviously, the goal of all of us is to get the best results for the people that we care for. And so, the more specific we can get in the research, the better that we can refine how we care for people. And so, for me, I one of the reasons, obviously, that we are supporters is because of that, because of the fact that you're leading the charge to drive the research and to create the research studies and to help to go and, give us clinical guidance. Because, for moms and dads, if you're watching this, right, there's two pieces to being a physician of any sort, medical, chiropractic, osteopathy, it doesn't matter. There's our clinical experience, and then there's evidence-based guidance that's given by the people that are creating the research. And so, there's this relationship that's required for us to be able to go and develop better treatment protocols for the people that we care for. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, because we can do better. I know we can do better, and we can help more people, and we can be more specific. But that's going to take, probably, a couple of lifetimes. But I'll start.
Well, then you better be hanging around for a long time.
Yeah, I'm going to encourage a few more people to join the geeky team.
I like it.
And it is, it's a real pleasure, and I feel a real honor is to help the clinicians, because you to me have the tough job, because people don't fit into nice little boxes, and they don't read the medical textbooks for some strange reason, and so they don't come in with your very clear-cut issues. It's very vague, right? And it's a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and so it's. To me, the toughest job is being a clinician and having to make those decisions that you have to make with every single patient every single day. So, I see it as a real honor to be able to support chiropractors and make their job as easy as I can with the literature that is available, so that you do have certainty about what it is that you do, and that you can communicate this as easy as possible. Because I also know that, it's quite tricky to read research articles. It's a skill and it's an art, and it's something that's taken many, many years. Like, I have a stack of research articles beside my bed every night. That's my bedtime reading. I think that's fun. Not necessarily chiropractic literature, because I just like reading research. Yeah. But, I know that's really, really rare, right? That's kind of a bit. But so that's why I've also wanted to translate this so that I can make it easy to understand for chiropractors, so that you guys can do an easier job by being able to easily share what the research says on a topic, even if we don't have research. Like, we don't have clinical research that proves we cure or help kids with ADHD or autism or cerebral palsy or these things yet. I'm not saying, and I'm saying yet because we don't know. I mean, we literally haven't done the research. So it's not that we don't have evidence that it doesn't work, but we just don't have any evidence. And that's, but we need to know that. So then, what's relevant in that case is, then understanding the mechanisms. Because if the mechanisms work this way in adults, chances are it probably works that way in children. And these things are known to be relevant and relatable to these different kid populations, the autism, the ADHD, the cerebral palsy. And so it makes sense then. Like, there's actually so much evidence that indicates it's highly likely we would help these kids. We're starting pilot studies in those 3 populations right now in New Zealand, because of all this basic science evidence. I mean, it would be really bizarre if we didn't help some children with those conditions, but we just don't have the evidence yet. And that's why, to me, it's so important that we have that relationship with the clinicians. You help us so that we can do this research that can help you, and then this can only benefit the public. There's no way this relationship cannot benefit the public.
Completely agree. I completely agree, because I'll tell you what, it's something where, in the clinical setting here every day, right, one of the biggest things that we have to focus on is trying to help to bridge the knowledge gap, right, and teach people about, really and truly, in a very unique way, where the way that their body's built to work, and the regulatory balance that's required between the brain and the spinal cord and the organs and the spinal column. And when we can put hard data that tells us how these things connect, right? And we can start putting the science behind it. It really makes day-to-day life much easier for all of us, because it helps us to be able to communicate better to our patients really what's happening inside of them. And it explains a lot of the things they report back to us, which is also really important, right? Because we love the great stories, and we love sharing the wins, right? But I mean, all of us have been there at points in times where someone comes in and say, so I had this change, and the only thing that happened was I got adjusted. Is there any way that, like, this awesome thing that just happened to me could be related?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, Yeah. But if you understand what's happening, right, neurologically to somebody, it makes it a lot easier, like you said, to understand the mechanisms. And I think that's really the most important thing.
Well, we've lacked that for 120, 30 years. We have not known how it worked. We used to think it was these bones that are place squashing nerves. We know that that's probably not the case for 99% of our patients. Unless you're coming in with radiating arm or leg pain, you probably don't have a squashed nerve. But what we do know is happening is that the communication of the little muscles closest to your spine and skull, that communication from those little muscles to your brain is so vitally important for your brain to accurately know what's going on in your body and the world around it. And if it does know what's going on as accurately as possible, then it seems to be able to heal and function better. And then obviously we need to calm the whole system down, especially if it's in that hyper state. And we know that even the prefrontal cortex is very important in that. And that seems to be the area of the brain that we're impacting. I mean, maybe we're helping the brain to connect better, but I don't know, this is where it gets so exciting, because it starts to make sense why these people, like you say, come in to you and tell you, I have this amazing change, and what, could that be your care? I mean, 20 years ago, we were looking at them going, yeah, I'm sure it is, but I have no idea how. But now it's like, yeah, well, actually, it's possible, because, we know we actually changed the prefrontal cortex and we changed the cerebellum, and they are highly related to exactly what you're talking about. It would make perfect sense. And that's what's so cool.
Oh, yeah, that's really cool. It's funny, because I love how you described the change in what really we understand about the spinal function, because even in as recently as just the last several years, right, there was still a lot of the emphasis on bone out of place, right, in chiropractic schools, right?
I know.
Right. And so, the understanding of the role of those spinal muscles, it changes the conversation entirely, right? Because, moms and dads, if you're watching this, right, and you've been to a chiropractor before and you hear that the problems are coming from bone out of place, and like Dr. Haavik said, unless it's like a disc issue, then legitimately that's really probably not the mechanism, right? It's an input problem, right? And because the brain
communication problem, yeah.
Yeah.
It's usually a communication problem between the spine and the brain.
Mm-hmm.
But the cool thing too is, Scott, that actually even can make a difference to how you, especially as an adult, how you feel. Because if you are told and believe that you've got bones out of place in your spine, it actually influences your ability to heal. But if you are told and you realize that this is actually just a communication problem between my brain and my spine, which is making my brain less accurately aware of what's going on, it just changes the game of what's possible as well. And I don't know if you remember right to begin with, I was talking about how that, what you actually are expecting to happen influences your current reality. I mean, how freaky is that? This is brain facts, So what you believe and what you think is going to happen, this is partly what a placebo effect is as well. Yeah. But your beliefs are actually very important to your current reality. And it can actually change. So if you think you've got a broken back, that is going to affect you. If you think that you have a communication problem, which is the most likely and scientifically, supported mechanism that we now know, it is a completely different belief system, which changes, again, your ability to heal.
Oh, yeah. Well, and that goes right back into what they call the biopsychosocial effect, right? It's the expectation of the person drives the recovery. So, obviously having a good attitude and a belief that you're going to get better and having a really a solid understanding based upon what you talked about of what's actually happening inside of my body gives you a better understanding that, my body is capable of healing, and brings you more into the process so that your attitude, your beliefs can be really driving your body's healing processes forward, right? Because if our
responsibility yourself, this is your body and your health, and you can influence your body and your health. You shouldn't really be looking to an external doctor. Doctors can help you. Even when we do our adjustments, right? It's the body that takes those forces and clears up that communication and gets that brain functioning better so that it's more accurately aware of what's going on inside and outside you, So it's, and there's so much you can do yourself, by exercising properly and eating healthy and, having good relationships and being positive and, all those kinds of things.
Yep, I completely agree, because it really is. It's a continuum, right? I mean, our health and well-being is really a continuum, right? And one of the big things is that, we can help clinically to drive the healing process by improving the communication, right? But it's always that coupling effect of, am I doing things nutritionally? Am I doing things with exercise? Am I meditating? Am I, dealing with stressors in my life effectively? Am I making time to allow for self-care? Creating an environment both physically and mentally for healing. And that really is a big factor in overall healing for all of us, isn't it?
I think a lot of us too are actually our own worst enemies. Like we're our own biggest bullies, and just being that self-compassion and just being kind, especially I would say if there's parents out there of children with some of these disorders too, because it is such a burden in a way too. And I know you love your children to bits, but do you actually take time to look after yourself? Because you are their carer, and if you're not looking after yourself, then like one of the hardest things that used to break my heart is if a parent brought a child in to see me but wouldn't get checked themselves. I would say, oh, no, then it's a 2-for-1 deal. We're seeing you, because the mom and the dad, they need their own prefrontal cortexes working properly to be able to cope with what's going on and all the additional demands that they have. And I think this also brings us to that whole thing that we were talking about before we even started our interview here about the neuroplasticity, that the brain is actually always changing. And so this inner reality that you have in your brain can change all the time. And that's what's so interesting. It's like a flowing river, and you never really step into the exact same river twice, because the water has changed. It's subtly changed the riverbed. The brain's the same thing. Because it's constantly getting new sensory information coming in, it is also always subtly changing. It's whether that change is going in a good direction or a bad direction that really becomes very important. But you can monitor that even in yourself and your children by monitoring your heart rate and keeping that low, and your heart rate variability and keeping that high. If you have low heart rate variability and very high heart rates, then your body is really stressed out, and you really need to reverse that. And there are many things that do that, but I would say very, very importantly is chiropractic care.
Oh yeah, and it's so true. I mean, because that's the neuroplasticity, I think, is something when people really grasp what that means, and then understand that there is an amount of influence that's required to get the brain to induce change that stays. I think that really is a critical thing. I was doing an interview with Dr. Patrick Porter from BrainTap recently.
I know Patrick too.
We had a really cool conversation actually about you and a lot of your work, and really talking about this neuroplasticity effect and about the ability to go and create a state of consistent positive brain change.
Well, it's almost like you have to exercise the brain to function better. And once you grasp that, that's a big key shift, because it isn't something that just happens to you. It's a process that happens with you. And so it's just like you go to the gym, you don't get fit after going to the gym once, I wish, but it doesn't quite work that way, right? And so these positive changes to take place, like, regularly getting your chiropractic care. Like, I send my kids off to someone else, even though I'm a chiropractor, and my husband, because he's a pain in the ass, you know what I mean, to have to look after your own partner. Anyway, I do love him, really, but you know what I mean? Yeah. But I actually pay my chiropractor. I know that most chiropractors will see each other and their families for nothing, but I just refuse to do that. But just that regular care for my family is so important to me that I pay someone else to do that properly. Yeah. So that, just in case I was too busy and then I don't think about it properly, and I might, you know what I mean? What's the saying? The shoemaker's kids go bare feet or something like that. I don't want that to happen to my family. This is so important to me. But there's so many things that influence the brain. But number one, make sure that they're getting that. We're all getting regular chiropractic care. And then number two is, meditation. I've learned, for me, I have to calm my brain down because I'm on such a mission that, it just goes off at 1,000,000 miles per hour. So and then the food, it slips every now and then we have to go through and we, throw out all the crap that's in the fridge and the pantry, and, okay, the next 3 weeks, there's no gluten, there's no dairy, there's no sugar. Just tidy it all up again, get all that inflammatory foods out of there, having all the nice, healthy, natural foods, and exercise, every day. I mean, I have 2 dogs specifically so that they get exercise, because I can do it for them more than I can do it for myself. Isn't that crazy? Yeah. But it's some of those key things that, and then and notice over time. You have your ups and downs, but I monitor my own heart rate variability and my morning heart rate. And I brought my morning heart rate, resting heart rate way down, unbelievably so, and my heart rate variability up. And so but it was a mission, because even for me, it got out of hand there for a while, even as a primary healthcare professional and a PhD and a doctor and a neuroscientist. Life gets so busy sometimes that I was completely, I was getting, really bad health-wise. And so I have to really pull the reins in and work hard. And it's a process, not a, there is no magic pill for this, It's
It's true. Well, it's funny. After I got done doing an adjustment, I was actually having this exact conversation with a woman here in practice last night, right? She's a mom of 3 kids. And they're all young, and she's going 1,000,000 miles an hour with them constantly. And she said how difficult it is for her to go and make any time for herself, right? And she's like, and I self-sabotage myself all the time. Yeah. I said, okay. I said, it's important for you to feel success, right? And because for her to go and feel success means that she's starting to make moves in the right direction. We talked about the importance of just carving out small amounts of time, right? Yeah. A little bit of time to devote to self-care, because one of the most important adjuncts that we can do to, the food and getting adjusted is we have to go and create that self-care space so that we can start to unload our stress hormones, get some physical activity, because all of those things also feed our brain and help us to go and bring down our stress response. And, we talked about just getting into a rhythm, right? Carve out 15 minutes.
You have to schedule it.
You do.
And allow yourself, I have to have that appointment. I need to go and get checked and adjusted. I have to have this appointment. I'm going to allow myself a monthly massage. We even schedule in holidays now at the beginning of the year, because otherwise I won't do it. I won't take time off. I've got too much to do. I've got this paper to write up and that paper to write up and this talk to give. And so, my husband is brilliant at it. We allocate these breaks, because I'm not good at breaks. I'm not good at stopping, and then for the first few days, I'm like, I don't know what to do with myself, because, and then eventually, I just calm down, and then I know, okay, now I'm way better and way more efficient and way more able to look after my family and way more able to fulfill my mission of enlightening the world about the science of chiropractic.
Amen. Dr. Heidi, I feel like we could probably go on all day about this.
Really?
Really, definitely, possibly. So
I think so.
Yes, for sure. So, but moms and dads, I would encourage you to go and visit Dr. Heidi's website and get her book, The Reality Check. Go to Heidi Haavik, spelled HAAVIK.com, and get the book, The Reality Check. So, I'm a doctor, right? And I keep this book here in my office because I think it's incredibly powerful when you start reading it from her perspective, right? The doctor who's, doing the brain research, and she can put it into terms that can help you to have a great understanding of what is happening inside of your body when you get adjusted. It's profound. I would also encourage you, if you are a doctor, right? Because I know many of the folks that are going to watch this inevitably are going to be doctors. Go to therealitycheck.com and start supporting Dr. Heidi, because there's such a need. There's such a need for us to get funding for research to help to go and drive the needle forward. Because, honestly, Dr. Heidi, I would love it if you had, a clinic of 500 employees that are being funded because of the work that's being done out here in the field by us, helping to go and drive money into the research center, because that's what's needed.
I've written an $80 million grant. That's what I could start tomorrow if I just had the money. We've got all the expertise there. We've got the equipment. We've got the people that are just sitting there waiting. We can start it. It's insane. It drives me nuts. There's so much more we need to do, but we'll get there. We'll get there.
We will, and we're going to keep you the drive.
If the public, also for the public members or mums and dads out there that want to look at these little animations, we've got over 30 of them now, and they just explain a little bit about, just a little small sort of 3 to 5 minute little videos on therealitycheck.com. If you want to just go and have a look, we really put this resource library together for chiropractors, but those little whiteboard animations are for the public, where we translate studies or whole topics of studies and try and explain it in really easy to use, understand language. And so not just the book, you can have a look, and they're all for free. You can just watch them all on our therealitycheck.com website. But we also have a whole lot more resources for chiropractors, as you know, behind the scenes of that Reality Check. We have this online membership, which is really just a big resource library, right, where you can access all the research, and we talk you through how to use it and what's there and what's not there and how to talk about it and what you can say and can't say and all those kinds of things.
Oh yeah, no, it's huge. It's huge. And if you're a follower of Elite Family Chiropractic, we have a number. I would mention almost all of them are on our timeline, have been posted at different points. In particular, I just posted your stress, the stress video that you just
Isn't that cool?
It was really cool. And if moms and dads, and I think this is really pointed for moms and dads, right? You live with a lifetime of accumulated stress, right?
Yeah.
Watch this video, right? And put some comments and feedback in there and let us know what you think, because I watched the video. I'm the doc, right? Like, I get this stuff at a very deep core root level. And it still emotionally impacts me when you can hear about how you can literally change your brain function by getting adjusted, and all of the different aspects. And I thought it was so great how you highlighted the role of all of these different areas to create wellness: meditation, nutrition, exercise, getting adjusted, to try and help people that are dealing with these long-term issues with stress. But also, you really did a great job of addressing the long-term impact of stress on people's bodies. Now it can really lead a whole cascade of events that can really rob them of the quality of life that they all deserve.
And I think so many of us, I challenge you to find a single person that hasn't actually had traumatic experience in their life. I mean, we all really have, plus all that accumulated stress. Like it affects all of us. So that video embodies what's happened in most of our bodies, in all of us. So understanding that is, I think, key and quite profound to how we're going to be able to also put ourselves on the right direction to heal.
Amen. Amen. Well, Dr. Heidi, I am going to have you back on here again so we can talk some more about the brain. Would that be okay with you?
Thanks, Scott. I'd love it anytime.
All right, wonderful. Thank you so much. And moms and dads, make sure that you go to her websites. We will also have those in the show notes, so you'll be able to go and get all those direct links. Follow her on Facebook, facebook.com, and it's /Heidi Haavik, Haavik.
Yeah.
And we'll have all that on there as well. And if you want to go to our page, we've got tons of her research on there, so you can see it for yourself. But and if you're a doctor of chiropractic, get on the Reality Check site and become a supporter. We need your help. All right. So this is Dr. Scott. Thank you for joining us in the Growing Healthy Families podcast. Dr. Heidi, thank you for your research. God bless you guys. Be elite. Thank you for listening to the Growing Healthy Families podcast, the world's #1 source for health education. Make sure to go to iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts and give us a review. Make sure to follow us on social media at the links listed in the show notes, and let us know what area of health you are struggling with, so we can get you and your family on the road to epic health.